I'ma stand till on Jersey in the stands. I'ma hit you on the slide.
All right, welcome to Fluent and Chill. I'm Fluent, he's Chill. Jay, how you doing, man?
In effect, man, you see where we at? Tampa, Florida, nice weather.
It's been a little bit better than a Zoom call.
A little bit.
A little bit better than Zoom call. So we're going to go through, obviously, the NBA playoffs. We have our final of the best NBA franchise of all time. We're going to tell you who's the winner of that. Of course, we're going to talk about what's been going on in the playoffs thus far.
Yep.
Every series except one is tied up at 2.
Yep.
But first, let's talk about the unofficial MVP, Jokic, second time in a row. But I don't know. I had Embiid. You had Giannis. How you feel about them picking Jokic?
They went strictly off the numbers, Tone, and I don't have a problem with that because that's something that happens like once every 15 years or so. But I would like to see some consistency because we still haven't gotten a definitive criteria on what the league MVP is, man. I'm having a difficult time with a guy like Joker. Don't get me wrong, he had a historical season, but I'm having a difficult time with a guy who his team finished almost 17 games at a first place, and he still won the league MVP. So I'm having. I thought I figured it out.
I thought I figured it out because it was you had to be statistically at the top in terms of points or rebounds, assists, or a combination on one of the best teams that had home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs.
Right.
With the exceptions of what we have, Russ, when he had that triple-double. Okay, we understood that. It hadn't been done since Oscar. Kareem in 75,
76. Yep.
Okay, fine. I'm okay with that. But for the rest of it, it's been consistent.
It has.
I've had some issues with some of them. You know, Nash over Kobe, Nash over Shaq, Derrick Rose over LeBron.
Yeah.
I think those three kind of stick out to me.
Yeah.
But at least I understood where they were coming from.
Right.
So for me, my case for Embiid was last season, and they like doing this, right? If you finish second or third, in Embiid's case, he probably should have won last year.
Right.
But the injury, he didn't play enough games.
Right.
So I thought, okay, they're going to make it up to him because he had another great season. His team, again, was a top 4 team, so they hosted the first round of the playoffs.
Right.
That's why I thought it was going to go to Embiid. Why did you think Giannis?
Well, because everything that Joker was doing, Giannis was doing it, and he was on a better team. So if you look at everything that Joker did in terms of PER, in terms of defensive win shares, because that's essentially what they went off, Tony. They went off the numbers, right? PER, defensive win shares, offensive win shares. Everything that Joker was at the top of the league in, Giannis was literally right behind him, and he was on a better team. Add all that up to the fact that he did it, like people talk about people talk about Joker having a team that wasn't really up to par where he didn't have that much help. Tone that doesn't really sit well with me simply because, you know, I watched Jordan win the league MVP in 87-88 with Sam Vincent and Charles Oakley as his second and third best player.
Yep.
You know, I watched LeBron James in the 08-09 season win the league MVP with Mo Williams and Delonte West as his second and third best player. So I've seen guys win with less. I've seen guys win more with less. So I'm having a difficult time with that logic. But if you're going to go off the numbers, I got no problem with that simply because it has to be some consistency. This has been unprecedented, and I don't think that we're going to see this again for a long time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Because if this sets a precedent of just stats,
right?
Well, now you're going to see guys playing in those 20, 30-point blowouts, going for numbers. It hurts the team.
Yeah, it does.
And I'll tell you, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but it reminds me, the other awards, though. Well, Scotty Barnes got Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
Similar numbers to Evan Mobley and to Cade Cunningham, but he was on the better team.
Right.
Monty Williams is going to win Coach of the Year. Nick Nurse, Coach of the Cavs.
Bigger staff.
He both deserving.
That's who I thought was going to win it.
But Monty Williams' team had the best record.
Correct.
Where's the consistency?
Right.
So that's my thing with that is if it sets this new precedent of just stats, then that needs to be consistent too among all the other awards, which it hasn't been so far.
Well, we still haven't gotten a satisfactory answer, Tone, on what exactly the criteria is. Is it the best player in the league? Is it the best player on the best team? Is it the guy who's playing the best? You know, which one is it? And if it's that,
we know it's not that. We know it's not the best player because then Jordan would have 10, LeBron would have 15.
Right.
So
we know that's not the case.
It's not that. We know it's not the best player on the best team because Donovan Mitchell last year was on the best team, didn't get a sniff.
So we know it's not that.
So we know it's not those two things.
Okay, so that's out.
All right, so I guess we need to reach out to the league and find out what's the criteria. NBA,
going on,
what
guys?
is the criteria?
What are you guys doing?
So let's talk about the actual games. Let's start in the West. So we have the series are tied 2-2. Dallas and I don't know why I'm blank on the Dallas series.
Dallas and Phoenix.
Dallas and Phoenix are tied at 2. Surprisingly, Chris Paul has played poor. If I told you at the beginning of the series that Doncic would score 30-plus in 2 games, score less than 30 in 2 games, and the series would be tied at 2, which games would you think were the 2 that they won? His 30-plus games or his 30-minus games?
Honestly, Tone, I would think that his 30-minus games, simply because that meant that the other guys were involved. So because from what I had seen throughout the season with Luka, with Luka doing what he's doing, they're better when everybody else is involved, and he's more of a playmaker as opposed to when they just let Luka eat. Luka goes for 35, Luka goes for 40. That means other guys aren't involved, and that means that he takes on a bigger load, not just offensively, but playmaking and all of that other stuff, and that hampers them. So if you were to tell me that, I'd be thinking, let's see, if he went 9 for 25 and he only had 26 points, but Brunson went 25 and Finney-Smith went 18.
Yeah, if you get the additional information.
Right, I'm thinking, all right.
Yeah, see, I thought, for me, initially, when I thought of it, I was like, well, 30-plus versus not scoring 30.
Right.
Well, that gives him a better chance because Luka had a good game.
Right.
Because if Luka has a bad game, I don't think they're winning.
Right.
But to your point, it seems that the less Luka scores and the more he facilitates for others, because he is technically the point guard of that team.
That's what he's listed
He's
as.
the one that gets that offense going. The better he does at getting Brunson and others involved, the better that team goes.
Yep.
So how do we feel now? So it's 2-2. Can I just pause for a second with Chris? Because I want to talk about Chris Paul. If I'm Chris Paul, I'm coming out and having the game of my life after what happened in the stands after that game. He's played poorly. Do you think he needs that extra motivation? Will it be extra motivation in Game 5? And does that propel them for the series?
I do think it'll be extra motivation, but up until that point, Chris Paul had just been playing un-Chris Paul-like. I just was so surprised at what he had done. I don't think I'd ever seen Chris Paul have 7 turnovers in a playoff game. Not even in a playoff game, just the game overall. I don't think I've ever seen him have 7 turnovers, Tone. That was very uncharacteristic of him. Him not taking care of the basketball, him getting himself in foul trouble. Now, I know that, Monty Williams rolled the dice with him, with keeping him in the lineup. And you said this in the past. You see guys, they'll pick up their 3rd foul and they'll look at the coach. Coach, I'm good.
You're a vet. You know how to play.
Right.
You're smart. Chris Paul's probably has the highest IQ
Right.
of any player in the history of basketball. If not, he's in that conversation.
Absolutely.
So if he says, I'm good, I trust him.
Okay, I trust him. Now, I'm rolling the dice, and more times than not, he's going to win, right? More times than not, he's going to win. But in that particular situation, I don't think he should have been in the game. At the end of the second quarter, they were already down 10, and I don't think that him being on the floor would have affected any more of what was already going on. You go into the half with exactly that deficit, but I think Chris Paul picks up his game in the second. I think he picks up his game in Game 5. Absolutely, he does.
And do you have the Suns still? Because you had picked the Suns, I think, in 5 or 6.
I picked them in 5, but I still picked the Suns in 6. I do.
6? At first I thought first round Luka, he got over that hump. We good.
Yep.
Right now we can't say, oh, Luka's always out in the first round. I think Luka and the Mavs might surprise some people and make it a 7-game series, but I'm still going with the Suns.
Wow.
I'm still going with the Suns. I'm not that crazy. I'm crazy. I'm not that crazy. All right. The other one in the West, we got Memphis and Golden State. Should be tied 2-2. Let's be honest. It should be tied 2-2. I want to start with the Ja Morant injury. Because when Dylan Brooks took that shot on Gary Payton, you said the outcome of the play, because he got hurt, should affect his suspension as his suspension length. Does the outcome of the play from Jordan Poole on Ja now being hurt, should he be suspended then?
No, because it was inadvertent, number 1. And number 2, which is the most important thing, Tony, if this was January, would we be talking about this Jordan Poole thing? I don't think we'd even have this discussion. So with that being said, I don't think it's that big a deal. Ja Morant got his knee tweaked, which is the same knee that's been bothering him throughout the season, and it was inadvertent. But when I look at what happened with this Golden State team, I think they've done a great job on Steph Curry, man. I think they did a great job defensively. And I shouldn't be surprised because Memphis is one of the better defensive teams in the game, and they've been that the entire season. They've been one of the better shot-blocking teams. They've been one of the better overall defensive teams. So I shouldn't really be surprised at that. I mean, they were leading the entire game, and they gave it up at the end. What I thought was also interesting, Tone, was Golden State's game plan, which is we're going to match athleticism, and in the process of matching athleticism, we'll leave it to the vets at the end to close it out. And I think that's what Golden State did.
It's interesting. If you would have told me Golden State went 2 for 20 in the first half from 3,
yikes,
I would have said Memphis is up big and they win this game. And that's why I say they should win this game. The problem is Memphis went 4 of 20 from 3.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of quick shots. And what did I warn you before the series? I picked Memphis. I'll admit to it. You picked the Warriors, but I said Memphis leads the league in steals, leads the league in blocks.
Yep.
But they're also shooting a low percentage from 3, a low percentage from the field. And those two things are going to, whichever one wins out, that's how this series is going to go for them. And that's what I saw. I saw a team that was getting after it defensively, excuse me. But then offensively, I think, Dylan Brooks was taking quick shots. He's trying to come back from that suspension. I think he felt bad. A bunch of quick shots where they should have been slowing the game down. And then I saw something that people always say we're not used to seeing. Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, 0 for 10 for 3.
Yep.
Steph Curry, terrible from 3. The Warriors, I think, 23, 24% from 3. So
Yeah.
uncharacteristically bad game. But who stepped up in the fourth quarter to bring it home? Steph Curry. He's the guy that's not supposed to be the fourth quarter guy. Even though he's their best player, that's always the knock.
Yep.
Is that a sign of things to come?
Well, absolutely, I think it is. I mean, we're talking about a guy who up until that point, I mean, he was 5 for 14 in the second half, and he really didn't do much. And that's a testament to Memphis's defense, how good they are. I mean, the 18 points that Steph had in the fourth quarter, they had basically had a good handle on him up until that point, and he had gotten some really good shots. The problem that Memphis had was, to your point, quick shots are the equivalent of turnovers. So one pass, one shot, and we're getting no offensive rebounds. That's the equivalent to turning the basketball over faster. So I think that Memphis, they really shot themselves in the foot a lot, and they didn't get out in transition defensively. So that really hurt them, and that really got Steph going. So I do think this is a thing. This is a sign of things to come, Tone. I got Memphis. I think they're out in 5 games.
Unfortunately, I think you're right. And as a guy who picked Memphis,
Yep.
and watching that game, I think they were up 7 at one point, and I was looking at it going, they should be up 20.
Yeah.
They should be up 25. And then I think that was the game. So Memphis would have had a chance if they won that game without Ja.
Yep.
They were 20-5 in the regular season without Ja playing. That's why I was confident about it. At this point, I think the Grizzlies are done. So we're going to move over to the East now. Miami and the Sixers.
Yep.
Miami did what they were supposed to do.
Yep.
Embiid is out. They go up 2-0 at home. They go back to Philly. Embiid is back. Philly wins the next 2. And it's interesting because when I look at the series, I had Miami winning, and I think you had Miami winning as well. They're the better all-around team. But there's something that kind of flashed back to me. It was last night when I was thinking about this conversation that we're about to have. And when we talked about the Raptors series against the Sixers, you said something to me. And you said, there's no one on the Raptors that can match up with Joel Embiid. And that's why the Sixers are going to win the series. Who on Miami matches up with Joel Embiid?
Well, Bam can give him as much trouble as possible, but I don't think that he can match him. And I think that would be the difference in the series. But the problem is that I don't, as good as Miami is, and I've heard, and I've got this from a lot of people, Tone, as good as Miami is, I don't trust James Harden more than I think Miami is good. Now, I saw what James Harden did a couple of nights ago. I saw what he did a couple of nights ago.
30 points. It's like, it's like we went back in time.
Right. However, how many more of those am I going to get? And not only how many more of those am I going to get, how often is he going to play like that? If I could get 19 and 12 from him, that'd be great. But I don't know if I'm going to get that on a consistent basis because, like I said, I don't trust him more than I think Miami is that team.
So you're sticking with Miami?
I am sticking with Miami.
I'm actually nervous because if I get anything close to that from Harden,
right,
I get what I've been getting from Maxey. No one can match up with Joel Embiid. I think Philadelphia might have a chance. I think this series goes 7 now. And when it's a 7-game series, you flip a coin. I'm going to stick with the home team and go with Miami. But now I think this is a long series.
Right.
Where I thought it was going to be quick at the beginning.
And I thought it was going to, when I saw the first two games with Embiid being out, I'm thinking this is a 5-game series tops. Even if he came back, what would he be able to contribute? But it was interesting when he did come back, the life that he gave them and how much better they were. So I definitely think we got a series, Tone, no doubt about that. I wouldn't be surprised if it went 7, but I think I think Miami finished them in 6.
So speaking of turning the clock back, right? Harden, we saw the old Harden score, 31? There's this young guy on the Celtics, Al Horford. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Gets dunked on by Giannis. Doesn't like the way he looked at me, which I think is funny because every bad movie you've seen, it's who are you looking at? What are you looking at?
Yeah,
It's one of those moments, right? That was Al Horford, because not only did he say I didn't like the way he looked at me, he said something I didn't understand, but he looked at me. I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
He looked at me, and it got me going.
Yep.
Hold on, it's the playoffs. Why do you need a look to get going? But
Yeah.
okay, Al Horford took it personally, I guess. He dunks on Giannis and elbows him down to the ground, drops 30, and the Celtics win. Are the Bucks in trouble? They're missing Chris Middleton, but
yes,
are
they
they
are.
in trouble?
They're in serious trouble, Tone. And the reason why they're in serious trouble is because Al Horford, the last 2 games, he's averaging 26 and 12. I know that's nuts. I know that's nuts to say that. 14 and 5 in the fourth quarter alone that he's doing that. Now, we're talking about a guy in Al Horford at 35 who this is his first 30-point game in his career in the playoffs. Never had a 30-point game in his career in the playoffs. But this team, all collectively as a unit, Boston just looks so much better. This Milwaukee team, they miss it. They miss Middleton so much because when Giannis gets into the fourth quarter, all they do is they just give him the ball and get out of the way. Well, that's easy to guard. There's no action off the basketball. There's no movement. That's easy to guard. And Drew Holiday going 5 for 22, that's not helping them at all. Yeah. He's not helping them at all. Grayson Allen is not helping them at all. And they really miss Middleton as that second playmaker, second ball handler.
Yeah, I said it at the beginning. What they're going to miss from Middleton is, one, his shooting, obviously.
Yep.
But where that offense is going to come from. So now Giannis needs to do more, which, look, it takes energy away from his defensive end too.
Yep.
Drew Holiday, he's going to have to shoot the ball more. That takes away from his ability to play defense.
Yep.
People don't always get that when you have to exert more energy on one side of the ball, it comes from somewhere.
Oh, absolutely it does.
And it takes away. And now you got guys, it's like when just think about it. Middleton comes out, now you got to put a starter in. Well, that's someone who's normally off the bench.
Right.
So now the whole bench rotation is everything, literally your entire game plan changes. Regardless of how good that player is, it happens to be their second or third best player, second offensive option. Now everything changes, right? Those 30 minutes, 35 minutes he's giving you have to be distributed out, or someone else. I've actually always said this. I wonder if taking someone, I know this isn't great because if the person's the 12th man, he's the 12th man for a reason.
Right.
But putting that person just into the starting role to keep the bench rotation the same.
And that guy that's coming off the bench, I'm playing like I'm coming off the bench. I'm not playing like
There's a difference.
I'm not playing like I'm a starter. I'm playing like I'm coming off the bench and I'm only going to be out here for 20 minutes or maybe 25 minutes. I'm not playing like I'm going to be out here for 35 minutes and these guys really depend on me to be what I was coming off the bench even more for 35 minutes. So it's completely different and my role changes. And a lot of guys, that's why they struggle with that.
Well, and let's not forget the other part that most people don't talk about. When you come off the bench, you're playing against
second unit guys.
Yes,
you are.
And second unit defense, right? That's why some people look so good in the G League.
Yeah.
And then they come into a regular season game and it's not the same player.
Not the same thing at all.
It is the same player. It's different defenders,
not the same
right?
thing at all.
So we say it's gotten difficult.
Yep.
Are you flipping your pick?
I'm still sticking with the Bucks. I am.
Okay.
I had the Bucks in 6, and I'm still sticking with them. I think the Game 5 winner wins this series, though.
Yeah,
I do. I think the Game 5 winner wins this series. I think that we're gonna have a dogfight, Tone.
If I know anything
in Game
about
5.
if I know anything about Giannis, and I know a little bit about Giannis, what happened last night is going to inspire him to have. Yeah, you're going to see another kind of 40-15 game. 40 points, 15 rebound game from Giannis, and I think the Bucks win.
Yeah,
and I think they take the series in 6 as well.
Horford talking about that switch that he hit. Giannis
is going to hit that switch.
Because you're not going to dunk on me and then bow me in the face, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
No.
Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Two-time back-to-back MVP, Finals MVP, defending champ. I think he'll come back with a vengeance.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to go from the current NBA stuff. Actually, on the current NBA stuff, I want to talk about quickly. Because we heard when Dylan hit Poole, Kerr said he broke a code. Then Morant tried to use the same. He broke a code. I don't want to talk about those codes.
Right.
Because, hey, those are 3 days old. That's old news.
Right.
I want to talk about this. Because if it was me, and I'm not saying this is correct.
Right.
But if it was me, say anything you want to me. You got trolls, I got trolls. We hear a ton of stuff. NBA players, I'm sure hear a ton of stuff. You want to heckle me? Heckle me. You want to say stuff to my family? I start to get a little offended.
Of course.
You put your hands on my wife or my mother.
Yeah.
I'm not standing on the court telling you I'll see you later. So I give Chris Paul a ton of respect for restraint.
Yeah.
I'm going run our test on you, and I'm in the stands. What do you think?
Well,
Chris Paul's the right. Don't get it. Chris Paul is right. I'm wrong. But
we got to understand what fan is short for. It's short for fanatic, and they cheer for their team. But there is a line. There are things that you can and cannot do, and that's up to security to make sure that they handle these people, because it's really, when the game's going on, it's really not much that you can do about this sort of stuff until you find out that it's going on. Now, once you find out that it's going on, then you deal with it. Now, with Chris Paul in his particular situation, I can't let that affect my game as much, but it definitely needs to be dealt with quickly, Tone.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is not something that's going to go on once I find out about it. This is definitely something that I'm going to deal with if you don't.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to do something about it. And there's a code too, Tone. There's
There
absolutely
is
a code. When we're playing, you're going to talk to me.
Sure.
All right, there's now when you're talking about my wife, when you're talking about my family, no, absolutely not. We're not doing that.
no. Here's the thing. I'm not saying it's okay, but like when you're talking to me, I get it. You're going to try to get under my skin, so you're going to talk about my wife, my kids, my family, my mom, but you don't talk to them. You don't say stuff to them. So the fact that someone put hands on them in front of his kids,
That makes it worse.
And he had a very good quote, right? Or a tweet, I guess, where he said, if you're going to find players for interacting negatively with fans,
Right.
there needs to be repercussions if fans do stuff like that.
I
So
think it
that
is, though,
really
Tone.
rubbed me the wrong way. I know there is. I feel like we're not doing enough because
Right.
it happens every night.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go old school basketball. Before we do that, I wanna read you a quote. Since we're going our greatest NBA franchise of all time, it's the Bucks and the Lakers. I'm gonna go through who the starting lineups are, but first I want to read you something from JJ Redick. Here is my issue with them old timers. When they say S on us, we can't play in their era. Most NBA players in today's era could play in any era in the NBA.
Yep.
Most NBA players from the 50s, 60s, and early 70s could not play in today's NBA.
I don't believe that.
That's what JJ Redick says.
I don't believe that at all.
So JJ Redick, let me start by saying, for those that listen to JJ Redick, here's the word that you need to go to the dictionary and look up. I'll tell you what it means in a second. It's called pandering. So let me start by saying, how do you feel about that quote?
Well, first of all, he's wrong, because if you're an elite player, I think that you can play in any era. Now, of course, he's going to say guys can play back then, because this goes back to what you talked about, Tone. Well, if Bill Gates came to you and asked you about Microsoft today from 1999, he's going to be like,
a genius.
Right. You know why? Because I already seen it. So that's the same logic with JJ Redick. Well, if we fast forward 30 years, could those guys today play 30 years from now? Are we going to have the same conversation about those guys? Are we going to have the same conversation about LeBron James, about Steph Curry, about Kevin Durant 30 years from now? Those guys can't play 30 years from now? No, I absolutely don't believe that. And Rick Barry would be great today. Absolutely. Jabbar would be awesome today. I'm absolutely believing that Walt Frazier could play in the NBA today, and Bill Russell would be awesome today. There's no way you're selling that logic to me that those guys wouldn't be awesome today. The reason why you're saying that is because the game has changed, and you're under the impression that those guys couldn't change. Well, absolutely they could. So, no, I'm not buying that at all.
So could the players from the 50s, 60s, and 70s play the way they played then today? Well, no, but they couldn't even put their hand on the side of the ball. Every single dribble today would be called carrying or palming or whatever you want to call it. So here's the thing. He says most. So he saves himself a little bit. He says most players today could play in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I'll tell you this. Most of the players in the 50s, 60s, and 70s could play today because they would adapt. They would learn. Is JJ Redick some phenomenal athlete? No, he's my size. He's what, 6'3", 210. Well, actually, that's your size. I'm 6'3", 270. So this goes out to Chad Ochocinco, or as I call you, 8'5". I got to remind you, that is vegan lifestyle. This is McDonald's every day. That's the difference. So Ocho versus science, I think we know who won. All right, so that's my thing with JJ, is that he tries to say they couldn't play I think what he's trying to say is they couldn't play the way they play today.
Right.
Because J.J. Reddick's not a phenomenal athlete.
Right.
And if it wasn't for the three-point shot, would he have lasted this long?
Right.
Okay, so if he's playing in the 50s with no three-point line, is he having the same type of career?
And of course he's going to say, well, I would have destroyed the 50s. Well, the reason why you're saying that is because you've seen the 50s.
Right.
So, of course, you're going to say
born
that.
in the 30s and then try to dominate.
Right. So you can't and I'm trying to think, like, Doc wouldn't be able to play today. Doc would
come
be,
on.
Are you kidding me? Doc would be awesome today. Like, George Gervin couldn't play today? Are you kidding me? Give me a break.
All right, so speaking of those greats, let's go into this. I'm going to pull up our list here. So here's what we got. We said we have all-time Lakers, all-time Bucks.
This is awesome right
So
here.
I'm going to start with the Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bucks starting five, shout out to Dominic who put together every single team for this full tournament. I'm going to post the full tournament, but here we are down to the finals. So we got the Bucks, Sidney Moncrief, Ray Allen, Oscar Robertson, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Glenn Robinson. Now what we've done is we've moved Sidney Moncrief out of the starting lineup. We've started Oscar. So we got Oscar, Allen, Glenn Robinson at the 3, Giannis at the 4, and Kareem at the 5, with Sidney Moncrief being our defensive stopper coming off the bench.
Wow.
When you just look at that team, and now you know the Lakers team that's coming, I immediately think there's no team that could put a starting five that can beat these five.
I'm thinking about my point guard being one of the best distributors in the game ever. That's number one. I'm thinking about
Mr. Triple-Double
Right.
before Russ, but Mr. Triple-Double and a winner.
right. On top of that, add that to the fact we're talking about a guy in Ray Allen who I still to this day believe is the best catch and shoot guy that I've ever seen. It's the difference between the best shooter of all time and the best catch and shoot guy. Ray Allen's the best catch and shoot guy that I've ever seen.
And on the Bucks, he's not only a catch and shoot guy who would become, until Steph, the greatest three-point shooter ever.
Yeah.
He's also a slasher and a dunker.
Don't forget that.
Right, so he's giving you everything.
A lot of people see Ray Allen without hair. I remember him when he had hair.
When he had hair, yes.
Jesus Shuzzles. Yes, sir. Don't forget about Jesus. Let's make sure we remember, Tone. Big Dog averaged 20 a game for his career.
Right.
For his career. Big Dog wasn't just a 20-a-game guy. He averaged 20 a game for his career. Then you got Giannis.
He was a today's type of guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, because he could shoot. He's
He
a
would
big
be
guy.
awesome
He'd be
today.
awesome today.
He would be awesome. Then you got Giannis and Jabbar, man in the paint. Are you kidding me? Jabbar led the league in blocks, I think 4 times in the 70s. And then you got Giannis, who's the defensive player of the year 2 years ago. So, if you just gave me that 5, Tone, and I forgot to mention the 2-time defensive player of the year coming off the bench.
Coming off the bench, yeah.
Who locks up.
One of the greatest perimeter defenders
Are you
ever.
kidding me? If you gave me that 5, Tone, I'm thinking, man, who beating them? It's
So
gonna be hard.
here's the problem.
Uh-oh.
Here's the problem. They're going up against the all-time Lakers, which I don't even know how you pick 6, but we got them. So we're starting with Magic at the 1,
Yep.
Kobe at the 2, Elgin Baylor at the 3, Kareem at the 4, the older, wiser Kareem, Shaq at the 5. Oh, and the guy who averaged the most 20-point games, the most 30-point games, and the most 40-point games in the NBA Finals, Jerry West. Yeah, he's coming off the bench. Ouch.
This the only of all the 5s that you gave me, Tone. This is the only 5. I'm talking about Philadelphia, Boston. You line up all the 5s that you gave me. This is the only 5 that I'm looking at against this Milwaukee team that I think would handle them. Because I'm thinking about Magic, who would, number one, he would have this game as a track meet. Absolutely, he would. Right. And then I'm looking at an older, wiser Jabbar against a younger Jabbar. I think the older Jabbar would handle him. No question about that. I think that Giannis would do what he does, but he'd have a very difficult time dealing with Shaq. And we're talking about the Diesel. We ain't just talking about the Diesel. And please let me not forget that I got a 30-a-game guy at the 3 spot. I'm not even going to talk about Kobe Bryant. I got a 30-a-game guy in Elgin Baylor.
Baylor's best year was what? 38 and 18?
Nuts, Tone. Nuts. We're talking about a dude who averaged almost 40 and 20 and finished 4th in league MVP votes.
As the 5th option. He's the fifth option on this team, 38 and 18.
He was in the Army. He was in the Army Reserve too, by the way, while he was doing that. So on the weekends, I'm in the Army Reserve, and
that's crazy.
I'm 40 and 20 on a Tuesday. Give me a break.
That line, just think about it. Kobe at 6'6" is the smallest guy on your starting lineup. That is a big team.
I just think that crew, Tone, first of all, Magic at the head, what he would do is he would have them so focused. Not only would he have them so focused, he would know when we got into the meat and potatoes of the game, where we're going, who we're going to, how often we're going to them. I think Kobe would fall right in line, and he would do exactly what he needed to do. And you just talked about defensively with this Milwaukee Buck team. How about we talk about defensively with that Laker team? So I think that perimeter defense, and in interior defense with Shaq and Jabbar, I think that Milwaukee, they get handled in 6 games.
Yeah, no, I'm a Laker fan,
Yeah.
so I'm going to say the same thing. I got the
Milwaukee
Lakers in
gets
6, but as always, when we have something like this, we're going to put the poll out, so the poll's going to be right here. Lakers or Bucks, here's the all-time lists. Which one do you got, Lakers or Bucks? So we'll take a look at the poll, and we'll talk about that next week. While we're on the subject, though, of prime Shaq going up against Giannis, Rudy Gobert came out and said he'd handle Shaq. I'd hold him to 12. And Shaq said, in the first quarter. Who's right?
Shaq. The reason why I say that is simply because I've seen Shaq come to Kobe before the game starts, come to Hardaway before the game starts and say, quote, bring it to me. So when you get a guy like Rudy, who is one of the better defensive players in the game, and who is saying stuff like that, he would absolutely go after him. I'll give you a prime example, Tom, really quick. In the 2001 NBA Finals, Dikembe Mutombo was Defensive Player of the Year. I never seen a guy at that point get beat up like I saw Shaq beat Mutombo up. I thought that if I never see anything else again, I could watch that all day long. I thought that, and he completely dominated Mutombo. So for me to think that he couldn't do the same thing to Rudy is nuts.
If Shaq decided, here's the problem with Shaq. It's that what I'm about to say. If Shaq decided to, he'd be the best player. When we talk about GOAT, he'd be the GOAT, and we wouldn't have a debate.
It wouldn't be a
right?
discussion.
Kobe even came out and said, I think he was asked, what if Shaq, hit the gym as hard as you did? Where would Shaq be? And he'd be like, he'd be the GOAT. It wouldn't be a question.
It wouldn't be a question.
But he still had that mean streak. And so that's where I think Rudy Gobert is a great defensive player. He's not facing anyone like Shaq.
Not close, Tom.
Right? And how does Rudy Gobert, I don't even know, how does he do against Giannis? And Giannis isn't the load that Shaq was, is going to be my point. Because someone might come out and say, oh, he does great against Giannis. I don't know if he does or doesn't. They don't get to play very often.
I watched Joker put 50 on him.
Well,
I watched Embiid put 40 on him. So what makes me think that Shaq wouldn't go 45 and 20 against him? Give me a break.
All right. Last piece. We got one very important mail drop question. But before we jump into mail drop, let me remind you that this episode from the Yacht is brought to you by Matador AI, your best place for client engagement. Check out Matador AI. All right, so here's the question. Paul Pierce and Carmelo Anthony are ranked on ESPN's top 75 at number 62 and 69, respectively. Should Pierce and Melo be higher or lower than 62 and 69?
I think Pierce should be higher than 62. I definitely think Carmelo Anthony should be higher than 69. I think Carmelo Anthony is arguably a top 50 player all time. And I know you and I differ on that. I think that Carmelo Anthony is one of the better scorers in the history of the game. Now, even though he only does one thing, Tone, and he does it at an elite level, he does this one thing a lot better than a lot of other guys do a multitude of things.
So here's let me start with Pierce. So Pierce, I think, has the stats, has the accolades, historic moments. Like, he's got everything you look for, has the skill, has the talent, all of those things. So the longevity, 19 seasons, playing for the Celtics. So I think he is top 50. I'm with you with Paul Pierce. And there's some guys, listen, I've gone through the top 75, and just from 75 to 55, there's 10 guys I'm taking out of the top 75.
Of course.
Pierce is one that I think moves up. Melo, on the other hand, I have a problem with Melo. I have a problem rating Melo because he only does one thing.
You always have a problem with these guys, Tone.
I do. Okay.
You've
I've
always
asked you this
had that.
before, but let's ask it on camera. Carmelo Anthony as a scorer versus Dennis Rodman as a defender. Who does their thing better?
Dennis Rodman does his thing better than Carmelo Anthony does. And add that to the fact that it means more what Dennis does. So
Dennis is in the 60s.
Right.
And I look at Carmelo and I think, okay, so you score. There's a lot of guys that score. Dantley scores. Alex English was the #1 scorer in the 80s.
The entire decade.
The entire decade of the 80s. With Jordan and Dr. J and guys like that in the league. Dominique Wilkins, Bird. He's not even top 75. So
nice.
how do I have Melo there? So I look at Melo and I think from a skill set, I could put him top 50. From a what did he do with that skill? What did he do in terms of expectations?
Right.
I don't think he did that for me.
Right.
Because him and maybe it's, again, who he came into the league with. But Melo and LeBron came into the league the same year. Melo had the 1 year at Syracuse. He was phenomenal, great scorer. And we all thought their careers, they were going to be, like Magic and Bird.
Right.
They were going to be battling for chips every year.
Right.
I'm not saying he had no success, but he underachieved versus LeBron, who overachieved. So I think the gap for me is the difference. And I think, you know what? Maybe he's out of the top 75. So I have like a 20 position swing with Melo. He could be 50, maybe 30 points. He could be 50, he could be 80.
But wait a minute, though, Tone. You got a guy in Carmelo Anthony. He came into the game a completely different player than LeBron James.
100%.
And not only did he come into the game a completely different player, we overrated what Carmelo Anthony was coming into the game. Carmelo Anthony was a scorer. James was much more of a complete player coming into the game than Carmelo Anthony. Even though Carmelo Anthony went to college, James was still a more complete player than Carmelo Anthony. Anthony came into
different
the game.
mindset, too.
Right, and not only different mindset, even in the pros, he became more of a scorer. James became more of an all-around player. Now, the idea of him underachieving, I mean, he did take the Nuggets to the Western Conference Championship. He did take the New York Knicks, who had been irrelevant for a bunch of years. He did take them to the playoffs. I can make the argument, Tone, that from 08 to 13, he was the best one-on-one player in the game. Now, again.
One-on-one.
You're right. Now, again.
We play 5-on-5.
Right, we do play 5-on-5. With that being said, we are talking about a guy who, this is what I do the best. Just like Dennis, this is what Dennis did the best. Now, I think that Dennis should be moved up, considering everything that he did for every team that he was on. I absolutely believe that he should be moved up. I'm not just looking at Dennis as just a rebounder and a defender. I think overall as a player, everything he did, his impact was way more. He was way more valuable than a bunch of guys that are ahead of him. No doubt about that.
Okay. All right. Well, all right. So I'll keep him in the top 75. But let us know what you think. Paul Pierce and Carmelo, I'll do two separate polls.
Yep.
Top 50 or out of the top 75. I'm not going to give you the option of where they are because that's where they are. And that's it. So the last thing, so we brought up one-on-one players. So just this is a reminder. So now that we've completed the greatest franchise of all time, congratulations to my Los Angeles Lakers, we are going to start the most incredible one-on-one tournament. So we're going to pick the top 20 one-on-one players in the history of the NBA. And the same thing, we're going to do a bracket. We're going to rank them and bring them down and pick who's the greatest number one one-on-one player of all time. Give us your feedback as well because we'd love to hear who should be on the list. I think Carmelo's making that list. He's going to be on that list for sure. But until next time.
Take it light, but take it.